Okay, today we begin with a simple image. You are standing alone before a towering stone door. It's ancient, weathered by centuries, sealed tight. No sign tells you what lies beyond, only silence. You step closer, and your breath catches. Something primal stirs. That door feels alive with everything you fear: uncertainty, change, the unknown. Your hand hovers over the iron handle. You could turn back, stay safe, but some part of you knows beyond this door there might be something freer, truer. Today on Stoic Dhamma, we explore a quiet but powerful idea from an ancient soul, Cleanthes of Assos. He left behind few words, but one of them lingers like a whisper at the edge of every challenge. What you fear might liberate you. In this meditation, we'll walk with him through fear, through fire, and toward a stiller kind of freedom. Fear is everywhere in our world. We scroll past it on news feeds. We carry it in inboxes filled with unread messages. We feel it when we hesitate to speak up in meetings, when we avoid hard conversations, or when we wake at 3 a.m., our minds racing. Fear often doesn't look like fear. It looks like busyness, like procrastination, like endless self-editing, like perfectionism dressed up in smart clothes. But under it all, a quiet dread that we might not be good enough, strong enough, loved enough. In ancient times, fear had a different shape but the same roots. Cleanthes knew it well. Before he became a Stoic philosopher, he worked all night carrying water just to afford lessons with Zeno of Citium. By day, he trained as a boxer, but his greatest battle wasn't in the arena, it was inside. It was against the parts of himself that trembled in the face of hardship, of pain, of the unknown, and that's where his greatest insight bloomed. What you fear might liberate you. It sounds like a contradiction. Liberation should feel light, bright, expansive. Fear feels the opposite: contracted, shadowy, gripping. But the Stoics weren't interested in comfort, they were interested in truth. And Cleanthes invites us to see fear not as a wall, but as a doorway. The very thing we avoid may be the threshold to our deeper self. That is the paradox of spiritual growth. Let's think about the fears that shape our daily lives. The fear of failure, so many dreams buried before they begin. The fear of rejection, so many connections never made. The fear of change, so many lives live smaller than they could be. These aren't just psychological hesitations, they're spiritual crossroads. They are chances, as Cleanthes saw, to choose liberation through discomfort, to choose action in place of avoidance, stillness in place of noise. But how can fear liberate us? Let's turn gently to the Stoic view of the human being. At the center of their philosophy is the logos, the rational principle that orders the universe. It lives in each of us as a flame of reason, clarity, and will. The Stoics believed that when we align our actions with this logos, we step into harmony with the cosmos. But fear clouds that flame. It makes us see chaos where there is only change. It makes us feel powerless where we still hold choice. Cleanthes taught that we suffer not because of events, but because of our resistance to them. When we fear something, we give it power over us. But when we face it not to conquer it, but to understand it, it begins to dissolve. What remains is not the end of fear, but the beginning of strength. Imagine standing before a difficult decision. One path feels uncertain, uncomfortable, even frightening. The other feels safe but stagnant. The Stoic way is not to charge blindly toward danger. It is to pause, breathe, and ask, which path aligns with virtue? Which path honors my reason, my courage, my deeper purpose? Often, it is the one we fear, because fear marks the edge of our current self. And liberation lives just beyond that edge. This idea echoes across time. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, you have the right to your actions, but not to the fruits of your actions. Act, even in fear. Even in uncertainty, that is where dignity lies. Seneca echoed this when he said, he who is brave is free, not because bravery removes fear, but because it moves with it. It walks anyway. Today, fear takes new forms, less visible, more internal. We fear being behind in life, missing out, disappointing others. We fear not being seen, not being enough. Social media amplifies these fears with curated lives and endless comparisons. But Cleanthes' whisper cuts through the noise. What you fear might liberate you. It invites you to step back and ask, is this fear mine? Is it helping me grow or holding me hostage? Let's return now to that stone doorway. You've seen it before. Maybe it's the phone call you haven't returned, the book you haven't started, the grief you haven't faced, the identity you've outgrown but haven't released. That doorway isn't a monster, it's a teacher. It offers you something if you're willing to walk through. The Stoics didn't seek hardship for its own sake, but they embraced it when it came. Because every trial was a forge, every fear, a kind of fire. And Cleanthes believed that if you walked through the fire with awareness, it would burn away not your strength, but your illusions. You would emerge with less fear not because the world changed, but because you did. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his Meditations, said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's the power Cleanthes points to. A hidden door behind the fear, a choice, silent but sacred. And so we arrive at the central question of this meditation. How might fear become a key, not a cage? How do we walk not around it, but through it, with grace? This is where we turn next. In part 2, we'll walk further into the world of Cleanthes, his life, his logic, his luminous commitment to freedom through courage. We'll meet the other Stoics who carried his torch, and see how their voices still echo in our own daily moments of hesitation and hope. You don't need to rush. This is not about forcing change, or overcoming fear in a single breath. It's about beginning to see differently. To see fear not as a wall, but as a doorway. And once you've seen the doorway, you can never quite unsee it again. Let's walk backward in time over 2,000 years to the dusty port city of Assos, in what is now western Turkey. This was the birthplace of Cleanthes, a man who would shape Stoic thought in quiet but lasting ways. Before he ever taught philosophy, he lived with his hands in the earth, carrying clay and water through the dark streets of Athens at night to afford his studies. He had no wealth, no family name to protect him, only a hunger for wisdom, and the discipline to carry it forward. He studied under Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, and slowly rose not just as a student, but as a man of character. When Cleanthes eventually led the Stoic school, he did so not by cleverness, but by how he lived. He was a man of few words, but great force. And it's from this life, shaped by labor, hardship, and silence, that we inherit his simple, powerful line, "What you fear might liberate you." At first glance, this phrase seems poetic, perhaps even comforting. But in the Stoic tradition, it's more than that. It's a diagnosis and a call to transformation. To understand it, we must begin with the foundational Stoic belief that fear is not something caused by the external world. It's a judgment we place upon it. This is central to Stoic logic. We are not disturbed by events, but by our interpretation of them. This was articulated most clearly by Epictetus, who wrote, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Fear is not the snake, it's the story we tell ourselves about the snake. Not the silence from a friend, but the story we build around it. Not failure itself, but the imagined consequences of it." When we begin to see fear not as truth, but as perspective, we loosen its grip. Cleanthes would have understood this intimately. His own life demanded physical courage, boxing, poverty, and long nights of toil. But more importantly, he cultivated moral courage, the willingness to face life as it is, not as he wished it to be. He embodied what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but a serene equanimity rooted in reason. To achieve this, one must confront fear without flinching. According to Stoic cosmology, the universe operates through the logos, a divine rationality, a natural order that underlies all things. Human beings, unique among animals, carry a spark of this logos within. To live well, said Cleanthes, is to align oneself with this rational order. And fear, when it overwhelms reason, severs that connection. It turns us inward, reactive, and small. So, when he said, "What you fear might liberate you," he was not being sentimental. He meant it quite precisely. That which you fear is the very thing testing your reason, your alignment with nature, your capacity to remain undisturbed in the face of change. If you face it with clarity, not avoidance, you become freer. Not because the fear goes away, but because it loses its authority over you. Let's bring in another voice, Seneca, the Roman Stoic and statesman. In his letter to Lucilius, he wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This, too, is the Stoic view. Our minds create elaborate disasters long before anything happens. The actual event might be difficult, but our rehearsals of it are usually worse. Liberation comes not from erasing all danger, but from stopping the unnecessary rehearsals of pain. Marcus Aurelius echoed this in his Meditations. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. The Stoics believed that freedom was internal, and it was found through the rational governance of thought. When we fear something, we can pause and ask, "Is this in my control? If not, then why give it reign over my mind?" The beauty of Stoicism is that it does not promise ease. It promises clarity. It teaches us that the trials we face, whether they be illness, change, or even death, are part of a greater whole. They do not exist to punish us, but to awaken us. And often, it is fear that blocks this awakening, not because fear is wrong, but because it is misunderstood. To the Stoic mind, fear is a signal, not an enemy. It's a flicker that says, "Here lies something you are still clinging to. Here is where your freedom has not yet arrived." In this sense, fear becomes diagnostic. It tells us where we have built our identities on sand, where we have mistaken the fleeting for the essential. Let's take an example. Imagine a person terrified of losing their job. The fear may seem obvious: economic security, social standing, purpose. But underneath that, Stoicism asks us, is your worth determined by this role? Is your peace dependent on circumstances outside your control? If so, then this fear is revealing an opportunity, a doorway, to detach, to align again with your deeper self, the one not rooted in externals. Cleanthes would likely smile at that realization, not out of cruelty, but out of respect. Because to him, fear is not failure, it's a flame. It burns away illusion, leaving what is real, and what is real is always free. Another way the Stoics engaged fear was through premeditatio malorum, the practice of mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios, not to worrying about them, but to prepare for them. If you can imagine loss, hardship, or change, and remain internally calm, you've already weakened fear's hold. You've practiced freedom. This is not denial, it is deeper engagement. Stoicism never tells you not to feel, but to feel rightly, to feel without surrender. As the Bhagavad Gita puts it, be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. This is ancient wisdom in another language. Do not let fear of failure stop you. Do not let fear of pain close your heart. Let duty, clarity, and courage be your compass. And so we see, the logic of Cleanthes was not a logic of escape. It was a logic of embodiment, of facing life with both eyes open. To him, fear was not the end of the path. It was its beginning, and he asks us, will you follow it? Will you trust that the door you dread may also be the door you need? We will go deeper in the next part. Now that we've explored the philosophical framework, it's time to descend from theory into living practice. What does this idea look like in your career, your relationships, your inner dialogue? Let us step into the world where fear meets the everyday and begins to transform it. Let's bring the wisdom of Cleanthes into the places where your life breathes, in work, in relationships, in your quiet moments of reflection. This isn't about abstract philosophy anymore. It's about how you carry yourself through your day, how fear subtly enters your decisions, and how with awareness it can be turned into something strong, rooted, and still. We begin with work. The modern world tells us to move fast, perform constantly, stay visible. In that noise, fear hides behind ambition. Fear of failure, fear of irrelevance, fear of being left behind. So, we overwork, we postpone risks, we silence new ideas. We play small while pretending we're playing safe. But what if you asked yourself, what is the cost of never trying? What you fear taking a new path, speaking an uncomfortable truth might just be the door to the freedom you crave. Seneca once wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." In work, this means daring to be misunderstood for a moment in order to be authentic for a lifetime, daring to say no, daring to change course. What fear resists, growth often requires. Your fear of the next step might be the signal that you're walking towards something real. Now imagine fear in your relationships. The fear of being vulnerable, the fear of being seen, the fear of being hurt again. It's common to retreat, to build walls and play roles. But Cleanthes would gently remind us, to love without openness is not to love at all. What we avoid deep connection, honesty, emotional intimacy is often the very medicine we need. This doesn't mean rushing into danger. It means allowing honesty where silence has hardened. It means leaning into the fear that says, if they truly see me, they'll leave, and responding with, then let them see. The fear may still live in you, but you are no longer ruled by it. You are walking through the doorway with your spine straight and your heart soft. In your inner world, fear takes different forms. You may fear being alone with your thoughts. You may fear slowing down, not because you're too busy, but because stillness reveals what motion hides. You may fear confronting your past, or owning your desires, or letting go of old identities that no longer serve you. But Cleanthes knew something essential. The mind cannot be free while running. He believed in facing reality, not numbing it, not reframing it into easy stories, but sitting with it, gently, until its shape became clear. Marcus Aurelius said it simply, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your fear of inner stillness may be the key to peace. Your fear of listening may be the beginning of wisdom. So what does it look like, practically, to turn fear into inner power? Let's begin with one small but powerful exercise. 1. Write down 3 things you fear this week. Be honest. Maybe it's asking for help. Maybe it's confronting someone. Maybe it's starting something you've delayed for years. 2. Sit with each one in silence for a minute. Notice how your body reacts. Tight shoulders, shallow breath, just observe, no judgment. 3. Ask, is this fear about something I can control? If yes, what small step could you take today? Not to conquer it, but to face it. If no, what story can you release around it? 4. Choose one fear and take one step toward it. It doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be real. A phone call, a paragraph written, a truth spoken. Cleanthes didn't believe in instant transformation. He believed in daily cultivation. The mind, like the body, strengthens through repetition, and each time you walk toward what you fear with awareness, you shift your inner structure. You teach your nervous system that courage is available, that peace is possible. You may not notice it right away, but over time, the doorways you once avoided become familiar paths, and the voice that once whispered, you can't, softens into a whisper of, you can. Another practice Cleanthes would have honored is mindful observation, watching your fear arise without immediately reacting. This is not suppression, it is presence. Next time you feel afraid, pause. Name it. Sit with it. Do not argue. Do not run. Simply stay. The longer you stay, the more fear reveals its temporary nature. It passes, and what remains is you clearer, steadier, freer. You can also use the Stoic practice of view from above. Imagine your life from the height of a mountain, or from the stars. Zoom out. Will this fear still matter in 5 years? In 5 months? In 5 days? Perspective weakens fear's grip. It restores your place in a vast, ordered cosmos. A cosmos that has carried you this far, and will carry you still. And then there is the practice of spoken meditation. Here's one you can use when fear rises. The door I fear is the door I must approach. I do not rush it. I do not force it open. But I walk toward it, with calm breath and an open heart. Fear is not the enemy. It is the threshold. Repeat it slowly, like a mantra. Let it enter not just your mind, but your body. The truth is, fear is not here to stop you. It's here to teach you. To refine your instincts, to awaken your choices. When met with presence, fear becomes a compass. When met with avoidance, it becomes a cage. Cleanthes walked through every door life gave him, poverty, rejection, physical struggle, and he never claimed to be fearless. He simply showed us that the path to liberation includes fear. It is carved by it. So, look gently at your week. Where are you hesitating? Where have you built stories of delay or avoidance? What if you no longer saw those places as problems, but as invitations? The invitation is not to be fearless. It is to be present. To say, I feel afraid and I choose to walk. That is where your real power begins. In the next part, we'll draw all this together cleanly, quietly, and completely. You'll discover how Cleanthes' insight can become a guiding principle in daily life. And you'll leave with a reflection that lives with you not just as an idea, but as a way of being. Fear doesn't leave us, but neither must we leave ourselves. There is strength in every trembling step you take toward your own truth. The fiery fear is often not the destroyer, but the purifier. This final chapter is not about grand transformations, but about how you carry small truths into tomorrow. How you walk, day by day, with the wisdom Cleanthes offered not as doctrine, but as quiet direction. You've seen how fear operates. Now, let us reflect on how to move with it, not to eliminate it, but to walk alongside it calmly, consciously, with purpose. Cleanthes, in all his quiet strength, lived a life shaped by inner order. He rose before the sun, he hauled water from the well. He listened, he wrote, he taught, and when ridicule came, when hardship knocked, he didn't argue with life. He aligned with it. He didn't seek applause. He sought inner clarity. That is the kind of fire we now speak of, not dramatic, but constant, a steady warmth inside. Imagine a life where your actions are rooted in purpose, not panic. Where your response to chaos is not reactivity, but quiet choice. Where you speak when needed, and remain still when silence says more. That life does not begin with achievement, it begins with attention, with watching how fear speaks to you, and how you choose to respond. With recognizing your own patterns, not to judge them, but to gently shift them. There is a passage by Cleanthes that echoes softly through time. Lead me, Zeus, and you, O destiny, wherever your decrees have assigned me. I follow without hesitation, but even if I choose to resist, I shall come all the same. This is not a cry of submission, it's a recognition of reality. Resistance changes nothing but our peace. Acceptance doesn't mean passivity, it means presence. To meet each moment as it is, and act from clarity rather than fear. This is where the light begins, in walking into the fire not to suffer, but to understand. Not to burn, but to transform. The fear that stops us is often just the heat before change. When we stay, breathe, and choose anyway, we are no longer slaves to fear. We become artists of the possible. So, what might this look like tomorrow morning? You rise, slowly. You don't grab your phone. You sit, you breathe. You ask yourself not what needs to be done, but what kind of person you wish to be. Then you carry that answer into action. You write one clear message. You say one difficult thing with kindness. You rest when your body asks. You resist the urge to rush. You trust that clarity comes from attention, not from speed. At midday, fear may knock, in the form of doubt, in the form of a meeting you don't want to attend, in the form of a voice saying, You're not ready, and you will smile. Not because the fear is gone, but because you remember, the fire does not control you. It only asks if you're willing to walk through it with eyes open. You walk anyway. That is the Stoic path, not cold, not distant but steady, open-eyed, willing to face life, not flinch from it. And when the evening comes, and you reflect, do so gently. Ask not what you achieved, but how you showed up. Did you speak from truth? Did you pause before reacting? Did you meet fear with awareness? If the answer is yes, even once, that is enough. If the answer is no, then start again tomorrow. The path does not punish, it waits, quietly. You are not here to master fear, you are here to relate to it differently. To hear it, but not obey, to let it speak, but not lead. You do this not once, but daily, quietly, over time. And slowly, something changes. You begin to feel steady in storms. You begin to trust yourself when things are unclear. You begin to glow not with certainty, but with calm. The fire inside no longer consumes, it warms, it guides. That is what Cleanthes lived, that is what you can live too. Let us close with a practice, not to end this reflection, but to carry it with you. A Stoic reflection for the end of day. I walked with my fear today, not against it. I listened, and I chose. Where I was silent, I watched. Where I was moved, I acted. What I did not change, I accepted. And what remains undone, I meet tomorrow not with dread, but with presence. The fire still burns, but I walk with it now. I walk in peace. You've listened not to a lesson, but to a quiet invitation. To meet your fear, not as an enemy, but as a threshold. The words of Cleanthes do not command you. They accompany you, gently, patiently, like the rhythm of breath, always returning. You will forget. You will fall back into rush and reaction. That's human, but in the forgetting, you will remember more clearly. In the falling, you will rise more steadily. Because now you know, what you fear might not be the end. It might be the door. So walk forward not to conquer, but to understand. Not to prove, but to live fully. Fear is a teacher. Fire is a mirror. And every step through both is a return to yourself. Each day is a new chance to begin this walk again, quietly, deliberately, one breath at a time, one act of courage at a time. You do not need to see the whole path. You only need to take the next gentle step, and when it gets hard, remember Cleanthes, who carried water by night and wrote wisdom by day, who met life as it was and walked through fear with calm. Your strength is not in how loud you are, but in how quietly you return to yourself. Thank you for walking this journey with us. See you in the next meditation.